Tash, how long does it take you to get dressed in there? Chloe's fist hammered on the door. 1 second, I yelled back. I quickly turned around and checked myself out in the mirror. Asterisk, gulp, asterisk. I hoped this one would pass Chloe's eagle eye test. Or else I was gonna be in hot water, taking a deep breath. I opened the door. Chloe turned around. It's about time. Whoa. Brumby craned his neck around her. Whoa, he echoed. You look good, mate. I coughed awkwardly, my hands stuffed in my pockets. I wore polished black boots, black jeans, a belt with the buckle in the shape of a rearing horse. My ebony horse amulet gleamed on the skin exposed by the tight, V-necked black t-shirt. Over that, I wore a black leather jacket. Yeah, you do, Chloe muttered in a sort of disappointed whimper. You do. Brumby crowed. Take it. Oh man, she actually agrees. Chloe punched him. Brumby grinned as he rubbed his shoulder. How did those words taste coming out of your mouth? He asked, hiding behind me. Bitter, Chloe replied deadpan before she hit him again. Good choice, Tash. She looked at me with disappointed eyes. But your makeover isn't done yet, she smiled happily. Brumby eyed me with panic-stricken eyes, a sentiment deeply echoed by me. It's not? Oh no, it isn't. We may have fixed your wardrobe, but we still have to do something about your hair. Suddenly self-conscious, I ran a hand through my shoulder-length black hair. I know I didn't exactly brush it, but still. What's wrong with my hair? God, why did I sound like a whiny little girl? Too, other than the fact that it's unruly, wild and covers your face half the time. She's just jelly 'cause your conditioner is way better than hers, Brumby said in a stage whisper. Chloe's eyes zeroed in on him like the crosshairs of a sniper rifle. What did you say? She said in a thunderous whisper. Nothing. Brumby hid himself behind some mannequins. Mr. Smooth, strikes again, eh? I muttered in an equally loud stage whisper. This time it was Brumby who glared at me, while Chloe grinned and gave me a high five. But of course I mused, shooting a sly glance at Chloe. He does have a point. My conditioner is way better than yours, girl. Chloe raised an eyebrow as Brumby howled with laughter. Just then Chloe's cell rang. She answered it with a bright smile. But then her expression shifted, first from a frown to surprise, and then a frown again. She held the phone out towards me. It's for you. Me? Who could possibly be calling me? I glanced at Brumby, who shrugged back. I took the phone. Hello? Hi, Tash. It's Trixie. Trixie Frick Frackin' Barden was calling me. I punched the air silently. Brumby grinned at me, but Chloe frowned. Focusing back on the call, deepened my voice and made it sound as manly as I could. Hi Trixie. What's up? It was the girl of my dreams on the other end of the call. My heart was in my mouth. Listen, Tash. I'm afraid I'll have to rain check on tonight. And down went the heart. Oh, I muttered into the phone, my shoulders slumping in disappointment. Yeah, or something came up, and no worries. I mean, we can always get together another time. The words sped out of my mouth so fast, I couldn't believe what I said. Oh. Great. So, bye. The line went dead. Bye. I whispered into the silent phone. I turned back to the others. Tash, what happened, mate? Asked Brumby. I mean, 1 minute you were punching the air, and the next. He trailed off looking at my face. Guess that told him the whole story. That was Trixie. I smiled at them, hiding behind the thin armor the smile gave me. Brumby started to smile back. Shia called to rain check the date. Brumby's grin faded, and for once his eyes didn't gleam with humor like they always did. Chloe's mouth was turned down and she smiled sympathetically at me. Tash, I'm so sorry, Chloe said gently, placing her hand on my arm. I know Trixie, she's my friend, but I didn't know she knew you or anything. Yeah, those two kinda have a complicated history. Brumby clasped my shoulder and squeezed. I nodded glumly at his words. Then I looked up. One thing though, how'd she know I'd be with you? Well, apparently, she called the stables, and they said that you had gone off with Brumby, and then she had apparently called around at my place, and found out that I was gone too. So then she'd gone back to the stables and, she blushed. What? We both said together. Well, the head trainer Jock told her that you'd be with Brumby, and that Brumby would be wherever I'd be. This time both of them blushed. Brumby's ears turned scarlet. I cracked a smile. I had to. Well then, I declare this outing as your first official date. I beamed at them. Both of them looked sharply at me. Tash, this is not a date. Brumby shot me a murderous look. Chloe just stood stock still, but I could tell her ears were tuned like sonar panels towards Brumby's voice. Of course this is a date. I held my ground, and I'm the acting chaperone, so you two lovebirds had better not sneak off while I go to the restroom. Got that? I turned and grinned at Chloe, who was hiding her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking. Tash, this is not a date, Brumby repeated, his face turning red. Well, why isn't it? I walked past Chloe and got right in Brumby's face. Well, you're here, and I wouldn't call going shopping for my best friend a date. So you want to take her on a proper date? I asked slyly. Of course I want to take her on a proper date. Brumby yelled loud enough for the whole store to hear. I grinned at him, then my smile widened as Brumby's expression went from mad dog to frozen to shock, and finally a bright burning red. I glanced at Chloe over my shoulder. Her green eyes were wide, and there was a touch of pink in her cheeks, and a smile peeped out from her mouth. There was an awkward silence. Then a slow clapping started from the back of the store. An old couple was staring at us and beaming. Suddenly the clapping grew louder as the other shoppers, the shop assistants, and even the grim-looking manager joined in. There were even a few whoops and whistles from outside the store. I saw a mall cop pounding his barrel chest and whistling. Score! Well then, I stepped back 2 paces and beamed at the pair of them. My work here is done. I bowed to Chloe. Miss Granger. She smiled shyly as she blinked her thanks. I spun on my heel and walked past the still frozen Brumby. I stopped, leaned in and whispered, "You're welcome, Brumby boy." I slapped him on the back. Brumby didn't even react. He was still frozen. I snapped my fingers in front of his face. Still no reaction. Rolling my eyes at Chloe, I snorted and gave him a sharp dig in the ribs. Brumby's eyes flickered and he blinked rapidly. Tash, he stuttered. I chuckled as I gave him a fist bump. Just don't screw up, okay? Now get going, Casanova. She's waiting for ya. I gave him a hearty shove towards Chloe. I ducked out of the store and hid behind 2 big plant pots, muttering the Mission Impossible theme song. Operation Bro had begun. See what I did there? Brumby plus Chloe = bro. Now that, my dear reader, is called good shipping. Now back to the story of those 2 young lovers. She stood there shyly. He stepped cautiously towards her. She smiled up at his towering form, then gently reached up and touched his cheek. He leaned in and whispered something to her, causing her to giggle. Then she gently rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. He grinned broadly and took her hand, and the 2 young lovers walked out of the store, followed by the crinkling and mellowing eyes of all those around them. Even me, I'll admit it, no judging reader, but watching those 2, it was enough to make a grown man cry. Haha, just kidding. You think I'd actually cry? Ha, no way. But I couldn't help smiling at the sight of them. But at the same time, I couldn't help wondering, would Brumby still be the same guy? Would he still have time to hang out or go riding or just, yeah, well, I know we all have to grow up, but still, well, I guess time would tell. Now back to the story. He led her through the mall, only stopping to buy her a rose. Now isn't that the sweetest thing you ever read? I mean, he bought her a rose. A red rose. You know what that means, don't ya? But still, damn Brumby, this girl hasn't just lassoed you. She's hog-tied you. They continued on their little elopement, gazing into each other's eyes, with the passion experienced only by 2 people, reckless with the joy of love. And hey, I'm pretty good at voiceovers. Angel was right. Maybe I should get into the whole announcing thing. And they walked as if lost in the dreams of love, while being stealthy, followed by a very dashing young man. If I may so myself, who darted from corner to corner like a super spy. I was an Iceman. I was the coolest of the cool. I was unfazed by danger. I was the flame that burned night and day. I was nearly arrested by a security guard for hiding, in what he called an inappropriate pose, behind a lingerie mannequin. Anyway, he took her to a rom-com movie. After checking what time the movie ended, I wandered around the mall for a while, then slipped into the car park and went to meet some guys from Monarch who I'd called from a payphone. We all had a bit of a bite to eat then. With a quick wink, I slipped a walkie-talkie into my pocket and walked away. The movie had just finished when I arrived back, and there the two little lovebirds were. He led her to the rooftop, leading her to a quiet little bench in the corner. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and he kissed her forehead as they watched the sunset. Then slowly she turned her head to face him. He looked deep into her eyes. She was leaning in. They were about to be interrupted by their chaperone, as said dashing chaperone sprang out from behind the bushes. Tash, what the hell are you? Brumby sputtered, leaping to his feet. I silenced him with a finger to his lips and pushed him back into Chloe's arms. I cleared my throat as I pranced in front of them. For your entertainment, tonight, lady and Mr. Boy Toy. Over here, I now present the one boy toy. Brumby's mouth dropped as Chloe burst out laughing. Then his eyes met mine with the horrific realization of what I was about to do. Tash, no. Oh no, no 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 no. Brumby buried his head in his hand. Gave myself a quick drum roll. Hey now, what I do see. Chara-lea-lea-lea. Oh good. Brumby and Sholib tedding in a trib. Chara-lea-lea-lea. Brumby and Sholib tedding in a trib. Chara-lea-lea-lea. Brumby and Sholib tedding in a trib. Hey he, SSI. I'm gonna kill him. I am going to kill him. Brumby muttered furiously as Chloe clapped her hands to the beat, laughing with delight. But I was not done yet. Ha 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 ha. Not by a long shot. First come love, then comes marriage, then comes the baby in the golden car. It was at that moment that part of my brain registered that Brumby had risen to his feet. So that part of the brain whispered to the fort of the Ew, Brumby's coming, and he looks pretty mad. The other part of my brain agreed. What do we do, Tash? They both asked. One word, boys. Scram. Laughing, I bolted while Brumby mock charged me. Tash, not one step closer, he growled. I put my hands up in surrender. A wide grin etched on my face as I slowly pulled out the walkie-talkie. What's that? Brumby asked cautiously. Talkie. I raised my eyebrow. Just a little surprise I cooked up for ya. I lifted the walkie-talkie to my mouth.
Light him up.
Copy that, said the voice on the other end. Suddenly the dusky sky blazed with light as the fireworks. Chloe squealed with delight as she gazed up at the fiery stars that lit up the sky. Brumby, I said in a stage whisper, now might be a good time to kiss her. Brumby chuckled and grinned at me, shook his head in wonder, then walked back to Chloe and kissed her. I mean, it was a real movie-style kiss. I know what you're thinking, reader. www. With a grin, I walked away. How'd it go? Asked Jingo, my black Arabian mare, as I mounted. Pretty well, Jingo, old girl. Pretty well indeed, I whispered as we trotted off down the street. I'm not old, she snorted fiercely. At 57, I have had several nerve-wracking experiences, some personal and most others professional. But this was new, rather unknown. Arun, my only son, looked nonchalant. He was setting up the conference room we were in, on the 85th floor with a backdrop of skyscrapers. What a view! I imagined my 2-story office building with files and photographs everywhere overlooking a small tea shop. My wife Uma and I visit him every year from India. This has been our annual ritual since he moved to Toronto for college and settled here. This year we knew would be different. Arun spoke. Ready? I saw an animated girl on the monitor smiling at me. In my 10 years of visiting him, he has never invited me to his office. But this time I was about to be in one of his important meetings, on a top project, as he called it. Yes, let's start, I said. I would have done anything to stop his nasty divorce with Pooja. I was their matchmaker, a regret I will always carry. I don't know what went wrong, but making me the villain of their story made it easier for them to end their 3-year-long marriage. I have not heard him call me Papa since then. As we were joined by few other people, Arun started speaking. Today we will witness the future of matchmaking. He paused to look at me and continued. It's called, quote, besthalf.ai. This girl on the monitor is a virtual robot called Anna, a personal assistant for anyone looking to find a match. Hi Anna, I am your competitor from the world of traditional matchmakers. I listened as he continued. Let's assume that I am looking for a potential partner for myself. I wish you meant that. He spoke as he showed the screen. I go to this app and create a profile with all my personal details. Got it, son. My intake form just made fancier. Suddenly Anna came to life. Hi buddy, I am Anna, the best. Are you here to hook up? Yes? Oh please, get out right away. If you are looking for a partner, put on your glasses and get ready to answer the questions that follow. She stopped. He handed me a glass. The moment I wore it, the skyscrapers vanished. I was in a house. There was also an angry woman in the scene. She was yelling at me for not being home early. As this went on, which was the most annoying sound I have heard after Uma's voice when she got angry, a new screen opened with a question. Anna asked, what would you do to tackle this angry partner? And then 4 options appeared. Yell back, beep, 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 silent, and apologize. Show your other cheek, as Bible says. Switch on TV, Packers or Vikings. Get out of the house. Fuck this shit. I must admit this was hilariously realistic, though I did not understand the American references made. Arun said, remove the glasses. He did. As you saw, Anna will save my choice here. I can take as many scenarios as I like. The more the better. Based on my choices, she will start finding my matches. He clicked few next buttons and the screen was listing down 3 names. One of them showed 90% in green. As he opened it, Anna spoke. Arun, this girl has maximum characteristics to complement your characters. He explained. If I chose yellbacks as my option, and my guess is this girl chose to be silent, this can neutralize the situation, hence complementing. Does it? There I was, matching people for 30 years with mostly astrology, status, and caste. Top things most of my customers cared about. I miserably failed to hide the sarcasm in my tone. Can this app also deliver your match at your doorstep? Because I heard delivery at your doorstep is the trend today. The room giggled. Someone said, great idea. Arun gave his team a stern look, and they stopped. I broke the silence with a serious question this time. Arun, why do you need me here? I was trying to hide my emotions. After successfully matching many, I was confident that I will find the best match for my son. I rejected the Christian girl he chose because marriage, in India, meant 2 families coming together, and my family would have never came together with theirs. Arun was a good kid, so he finally agreed to let me choose the girl. I am not convinced yet that choice of girl was the issue, but I became the scapegoat once things started falling apart. I was happy to see him get out of depression, but I did not realize until now that personal anger was fueling his motivation to create this app. This was him taking revenge. Revenge on human traditional matchmakers, like me. Yes, I want you to test this app and give your feedback, with your experience and knowledge on gauging customer requirements, at least most of the times. I did not like how it sounded. But hey, first time after his divorce, he is asking me for a help. If this technology gets out, the world of matchmaking as I knew it might never exist again. If I don't help, he might never give me another chance to make up for what he thinks I did to him. Can you give me some time to decide? I said. Arun showed me the extension to call him once I am ready. This stark silence reminded me of the angry woman yelling and everything that followed. Naive. I thought to myself, it takes much more than an Anna and some fancy technology for a successful marriage. Yet, I was afraid to jump either way, like a cat on the fence. To announce my support for this app is as good as calling myself a traitor to my community of matchmakers. After contemplating for a long time, I dialed the extension to Arun and told my decision. He said, "Thanks, Papa," and hung up. Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Peggy hummed the little tune as she wrote down the names of two people she knew from church on her yellow pad. She loved being able to put two people together that didn't seem like they would even like each other. Peggy thought of Katie and her husband James. She managed to get those two together, and it wasn't easy. James was very stubborn when it came to be willing to be matched. It was actually his son Jeremy that helped to get Katie and James together. This all began at a very large Baptist church in Houston, Texas. There were two single groups. One was for the people that had never been married, and the other group were for another group who had been married before and had gotten a divorce for whatever reason. James had dark hair and hazel eyes and was working as a security officer at the time. He hadn't been divorced for very long, but it was a bad breakup. He was able to see his son every other weekend as long as he wasn't working. Peggy would see James at church, and she remembers hearing him say, "The only way I will ever get married again is to see a burning bush on I-10 at high noon." Whenever the singles groups would go out to eat after the service, Peggy made sure that James sat by Katie. James seemed to never remember what Katie's name was when he sat by her. One night in May of 1989, the singles groups had an event together. It was the ending of the hit series, MASH, starring Alan Alda. Everyone was playing games in the big gym. A basketball game was going on in one corner. The volleyball net was set up and a game was going on there. Katie, with her blondish brown hair that was styled much the way Farrah Fawcett, but shorter, also had hazel green eyes. Katie looked around and didn't see anyone she knew. She did see a little boy with blonde hair and blue eyes sitting on the sidelines. She went over to him and started talking to him. They carried on a conversation for quite some time. About 30 minutes into talking to Jeremy, his father came up to see who he was talking to. Katie introduced herself. They made their introductions, and then James went back to playing volleyball. Katie stayed with Jeremy most of the night, hanging out with him. She even sat with James and Jeremy and ate dinner with them. Somewhere along the way, Katie and James started seeing each other. First it was just at church and going out to eat with the singles group, and then James would come over and watch sci-fiction movies at Katie's apartment. Sometimes he would bring Jeremy with him. There were times where Jeremy would fall asleep on the book that he brought with him. Then a couple of months went by, and after a retreat that the singles had, James decided to break it off with Katie. He told her, "I just want to be friends." Katie wiped a tear from one of her eyes. She was determined not to let James see her upset. They said their goodbyes at church one night after the service. Katie was trying to focus on her relationship with God. One day she was reading a passage, and the scripture basically said, "Wait on the Lord and good things will come." So Katie focused on work at Foley's and reading her Bible. She hadn't heard from James in about a month. Then her phone rang, and a little kid's voice said, "Miss Katie." It was Jeremy calling Katie. "I miss you. Can you come with me and my dad to go to Galveston?" How was Katie to compete with a 3-year-old asking to see her? So of course she said yes. James came and picked Katie up. Jeremy sat in the middle between Katie and James with his seatbelt on. He got to the ferry and parked the car, looked at the water while the ferry crossed the water to go to Galveston. Katie and Jeremy sang songs and read books all the way to the ferry and during the ferry ride. By the time they got off the ferry and into Galveston, Jeremy was fast asleep. This forced James and Katie to talk to each other. They decided that day, on October 29, 1989, that they would try again when it came to their relationship. By December 19th of 1989, they were engaged. Peggy thought about it. I wonder if I actually had anything to do with matching them or not. Well, at least I know they are still together, after 29 years and 4 children later. Peggy wrote down another name and went to work again, thinking of how she was going to get the new couple together. Katie Sue Johnson had never gone more than a week without work. She was no longer as young as before, but was still slender, energetic, and had a warm friendliness in those big brown eyes of hers. Whenever she was on an interview for work, she was usually the first selected. So her recent company had sent notices to all the girls and managers that they were moving to Minnesota, just as soon as the finishing touches were complete on the new facility. Most of the people at the top were having the company pay for the realty costs, moving expenses, even finding the new homes. The factory workers were on their own. Oh man, this is aggravating. Did you know they were shutting down? Katie wondered if her friend Janet had any idea. Janet looked up and stared at Katie with a sad look. I didn't. Fact is, I heard Charlotte talking a few weeks ago about how good the company was a-doing. I always thought Charlotte knew what the big bosses were a-doing. Katie looked down at her hands, still holding the canvas, ready to feed it into the threader. Are we supposed to finish these? Hey, there's Charlotte. Charlotte, did they expect us to keep on doing these or not? Charlotte was one of those really thin older ladies who was in charge of this section. She looked really pissed off. She was waving her termination slip in the air. How the hell am I supposed to know what these jackass SUBS got planned? Nobody tells me nothing. Oh well, anything. Katie in kind of a whiny voice said. Yeah, think we should just shut things off? It'll take another half hour to finish sewing this darned cover. Charlotte starts waving her hands in a signal to get the other girls to listen. Hey, if you just got a little to do, go ahead and finish your cover. The rest, turn 'em off, but don't move anything. One of the bosses should be down to tells what they want. Let's just hope we get paid for what we did today. But wait, in a few minutes the racket from the sewing machines slowed down to 3 or 4, then 1, then silence. Some of the women stood with their arms folded. Others just sat where they were. Suddenly old fat Harold Smothers appeared. He was one of the big shots who kind of waddled when he walked through. He had kind of a girly boy voice that made Katie's mouth stretch into a frown every time she heard it. Hello ladies. Gosh, we are so sorry to bring you such awful news today. Yes, Hubbard Covers is closing. Well, now, closing here. Some of you, well now. Especially the hard workers, like, he stared at Katie and Janet. Some of you will be considered at the new, the really new plant in Eden Prairie. Listen, it's just a hop and a skip from Minneapolis. And Mr. Covington is coming out with a travel bag division that has shown some okay results in the test markets. Ronald, get me that box over there. I left it there, by the door, Ron. No, that door. Yes, Ronald. That box. Harold made a big fanfare of pulling a bag out of the box to a room of silence. It was beige with a light brown handle, very dull and ordinary looking. A few girls close to his circle clapped politely. Harold had that same wide phony smile on his face, eyebrows elevated, and dropped the boring sample back in the box. He made a sweeping motion to Ronald to pick up the box, and the two went back out the door. Shirley, the girl with the bouncy blonde curls, came running up, looking all wide-eyed and pleased. Katie, you too, Janet. Guess what I just heard? Some diamond company is taking over this factory, just as soon as Hubbard Covers is gone. They's looking for people to sign up, I think over in Elm at 9th, the employment office. Soon as I get my check from Hubbard, I'm heading over there. Anyone need a ride? I got my van out in the lot if you want. Katie looked over at Janet, and her eyebrows went up, and her mouth made a tight little O. Hey, I'm going. Diamonds. Wow, I can't wait. She grabbed Janet's hand and did a little bouncy dance. Maybe we'll get taught how to make rings, earrings, necklaces. Oh man, that is such great news. I think I'll go ahead and take my car. Come on with me after we get our checks. And then afterwards we can stop and have a drinky poo to celebrate at Harry's. It seemed like that darned check line took forever to move forward. The two bookkeepers were unaware of the closing date, and some worksheets weren't up to date. And by 4:30, it was too late to go downtown. So, a quick stop at Harry's for a whiskey sour. Janet had a bud, then over to the smorgy place to get a bite to eat. Katie then took Janet over to her apartment complex and said, I'm headin' over to sign up first thing, right after 8. That's when they open, right? Janet gave a little shrug and said, Hey, if you come by, I'll be ready, 7:45 or so, okay? Katie watched a little bit of TV, like Jeopardy, caught some of the news, and took herself to bed. She had dreams of sparkly diamond necklaces, streaming all around, catching the light with dancing stars and color rainbows. She woke up at 6 and stumbled into her kitchen to brew some coffee. Her old Corolla started up just fine, and she drove a few blocks down Freeman to Alice and parked in front of Janet's complex. Jan's apartment was ground floor, facing Alice, so she saw Katie drive up. They were both happy and giggly that morning. Diamonds. After all that time, well, a couple years sewing canvas covers, now they were going into the diamond business. There was a line leading from the employment office's front door, and they saw all their friends and work associates in line. Syrup, Katie said. We should have got up earlier. Looks like we're gonna have to be lucky to get a job there. Wonder how many they're hiring. Janet said. Oh well, what do we have to lose? Come on. Hurry. There's a whole bunch coming from the parking lot. So they stood in line, a slow line, as each person had to be interviewed, their work record checked, their history looked at. One by one, they did the slow march. Stop and wait. Take another step. Wait. Finally Katie got through the door and wrote her name on a sheet at the counter. 10 minutes later, she was called in. She started to feel the excitement again. She even had worn her cubic zirconia diamond necklace to show the new bosses her interest in the product. She was told to take a seat. Name? The collegiate-looking young man with the mustache said. Katie Johnson. Previous employer, Katie answered, trying to look eager and energetic, as the questions rolled out. At the end, the young guy said, Thank you, Miss Johnson. I'll be calling you in just a few days. Katie was feeling anxious. Do you think I'll get a job? A get put on? A Mr. Weber? Oh, it's very likely. We have a need for probably the whole town. How do you feel working with chemicals and flammables? Katie gulped and felt her jaw drop open. Well, I think okay. You mean like a soldering gun? Or glue? She was thinking of jewelry making. Young Weber smiled. No, not exactly. You see, Diamond is a match company. We are going to need a slew of matchmakers. Katie felt a letdown, and could imagine her dream of being a diamond girl light up and go out, leaving a wooden match with its top curled, black, ready to discard.